Hello, everybody. Welcome back to LRH Wellness YouTube. Today, we're talking about anti-inflammatory and why it actually matters. So, I'm sure you've seen so many videos about, or just articles or everything that says you have to have an anti-inflammatory diet and that the Mediterranean diet is so good for you and all of that. But I'm sure you're wondering why. Or maybe you're not, but I'm going to tell you why. So, anti-inflammatory really just means that you're preventing your cells from having these mini little reactions. So, our body is made up of cells. They're like these small little things that have all the different working parts that make us be able to function, breathe, take in oxygen, recycle the waste of our body, all of that. And so, imagine like an allergic reaction. Let's say you're allergic to peanut butter. And you get in contact with peanut butter and your face starts swelling, your throat starts swelling, you might become really flush, you might feel super hot and get all the way to the point where you need to go to the hospital because you can't breathe or you have trouble swallowing, stuff like that. So when we think about anti-inflammatory, our body, each cell of ours has an allergic reaction to everything we put in our body. And some of those allergic reactions are bigger than others. So, for example, imagine that you've been out drinking. So, you wake up the next morning, and I know this happens to me when I drink. You wake up the next morning, hangover, whatever, but you might notice like you're swollen. Your hands are swollen, your face is a little puffy. You might notice your feet are a little swollen. And so that is an example of like an inflammatory reaction. And so what we think about with anti-inflammatory diets is that those kind of small inflammatory reactions are happening throughout our body at all times. Everything we put in our body creates some sort of reaction. Our cells have to process the food we eat, have to do something with the nutrients, with the things that aren't so good for us, and either get it out, keep it in, or decide what to do. So an anti-inflammatory diet means that you're minimizing the amount of inflammatory foods. So let's take sugars, candies, cakes, all that delicious stuff that I personally love, and it causes an inflammatory reaction. So our cells kind of fight against the excess sugar in our body. It fights against the bad fats, the bad cholesterol, because there are two types of cholesterol, and it makes an effort to get as much of the bad toxic stuff as it can out of our body. And as it does that, there's these little reactions that cause inflammation. So almost every disease that exists really has to do with inflammation because it's our body fighting the negative. So when you think of Alzheimer's, when you think of Crohn's disease, when you think of, honestly, a cold, most things in life have some sort of inflammatory response. And those are like our body's kind of defense cells working to keep out all the bad, keep us healthy. And so in that process, there's inflammation, there's swelling. That's kind of like, imagine like a little war and you're trying to protect your castle's gates, right? That's your body. And you have your little cells, your little knights on the edge fighting, boo, 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 boo. And like over on this side of the wall, like, they're really fighting hard, but this side they're kind of chilling. And so that's like what your body does for you at all times. Sometimes it's in fight mode, sometimes it's in flight mode, sometimes it's in let's chill out mode, but most times it's all of those at once. So when we eat an anti-inflammatory diet, the ambition is to minimize the inflammation, the inflammatory reactions, those immune reactions we have, so that we can keep our health at the most optimal. So this means GI health, that's how you digest your food. This also means like our mental health and like thinking about memory and the ability to have our brain function, stay awake, and so much more. So anti-inflammatory diets, often the Mediterranean diet is cited because the way people in the Mediterranean eat is a great example of an anti-inflammatory diet. So that means that you have like a lot of leafy greens, you're eating really low amounts of red meat, if any at all. You eat high levels of fish because there are omega-3 fats in there. And an anti-inflammatory diet really fills your body with a lot of the things that don't cause inflammation. And so when we eat a lot of inflammatory things, you think of all the extra salt that comes with them. So like hot dogs is like one of the biggest inflammatory things you can eat, like one of kind of the worst things for you, because it has all these nitrates in it. It has all these things that our bodies will react negatively to. So, you might go to the doctor and they say you need to eat more anti-inflammatory foods, you need to eat more healthy. But what does that mean? So that means lots of leafy greens, nuts, omega-3 fats, so like your fish, your tuna, your salmon, your cod, all of that, decreasing sugar, and instead eating more fruits and vegetables. So that's the idea with an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, as I said, all foods have a little bit of inflammatory, characteristics. And so even though you're eating the best you can, like there will still be little inflammation reactions throughout your body. But the idea is that you minimize them as much as you can so that you can maintain your optimal health. Now, nobody eats perfectly 24/7. Honestly, it is 10:26 and I had a piece of brownie 10 minutes ago. And that's not good for me and my inflammation, but I don't do the best and nobody can be perfect at all times. But the idea is that, you're substituting things that you would normally eat that might have kind of a worse reaction in your body for things that are better. So, for example, throwing in meatless Mondays. It makes such a difference. It makes a big difference in the environment, but it makes a massive difference in your health. Letting your body kind of have a day off from processing the meat that we eat can be a huge, huge thing. And it removes some of that extra stress on our body. Think about it. If you're thinking about your little wall, your little fortress, your little knights are going at it, if they're getting hit again and again and again and again and attacked again and again and again, then eventually it's going to fall. Your knights are going to get tired. They're going to be sick. They're over it. They don't want to fight for you. And that's what your body does. And that's how we get disease. When our bodies are fighting again and again and again and again against these inflammatory reactions, these bad things we put in our body, then eventually your body will kind of collapse with it. So it won't be able to stand up against these inflammations, against these inflammatory reactions, and that's when we see disease. So that's when disease sets in, and often it's chronic diseases. So you're thinking your diabetes, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, high cholesterol, gallbladder disease, all those things come once our bodies have kind of not like given up, but reached their threshold of ability to deal with this inflammatory reactions. So, as I said, we can't be perfect. I ate a brownie to start my day, and we're not always going to do what we need to do. But small changes, so, replacing your midday Smart Pop with like a nut mix, for example, or taking your morning waffle and instead doing like a shashuka, which is like a tomato and egg dish. Or like personally for me, I'm not a big breakfast person, so I eat in the morning like kale salad, sauteed kale, or Brussels sprouts. That's like my go-to breakfast. That keeps me fuller, and I know I'm starting my day off with foods that aren't as inflammatory but have such high fiber and goodness for me that they keep me full all day. So the idea is if we could make these small changes in our life and add in good food, good whole food is what I mean by that. So it's as close to the source as possible. So, you're getting your greens, you're getting your greens that haven't been over processed. So you think of collards, love some collard greens myself, but like we put a neck bone in there, a ham hock, you boil it down, you put salt in, you put vinegar, like that's a lot. So instead, if we're thinking of just like raw kale with maybe some lemon juice, that's a great anti-inflammatory thing to substitute. So the goal with all health and wellness is not to be perfect. It's not to have your like unhealthy moments. You want to live your life, but you want to make the small changes you can every single day to live better. So when we think of anti-inflammatory, what can you do? So like I said, substituting that 2-3 p.m. snack, whether it's popcorn, candy, whatever it might be, with some nuts. And maybe you're at the point where you need a nut mix with some M&Ms. Like that's okay. Like you can do that. That's fine. Maybe you try dark chocolate M&Ms. I honestly don't even know if that's a thing. But like for me, I would just throw some dark chocolate chips in a bag with some nuts and like eat it in walnuts. That's like one of my favorite snacks. If you're thinking about, cutting out sugar. So like if you are somebody who drinks soda, instead of having a soda, maybe you want to have like a flavored seltzer water without all the sugar. So I love a lemon seltzer water. I think they're delish. So something like that would be really great. Another option you can have is those meatless Mondays, as I mentioned, or substituting like 3 meals a week that you normally have fish with that you normally have meat, substituting it with fish. So you might do like lunches, for example. So maybe at lunch you eat like a turkey sandwich every day and some veggies, like maybe you have carrots or something. So maybe you can do a tuna salad or bring salmon, like meal prep, so you can have salmon. And if that's not possible for you, that's okay. But the idea is that you do the small swaps here and there. So if you have more questions about eating an anti-inflammatory diet, let me know. And I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm happy to make a whole video on like swaps you can make. I think that would be super interesting. And if you haven't, check out my TikTok about my anti-inflammatory drink I make every single morning. Well, I make it in bulk, and then I have it every single morning. And it's really been great for me, and I see it mostly in like the swelling in my hands. I feel like I have more energy, less brain fog when I drink it. I'm more regular with my boops and all of that. So thank you for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, follow, share. Let's build this channel, let's build this community, and let's get well together.